Today, I'm honored to be joined by Joshua Brandon. Joshua is a Holstrength and Elysium athlete, but his content goes way beyond fitness. With over 96,000 followers on Instagram, he's made it his mission not only to share the joy of fitness, but also share the joy that comes with following Christ. Today, we sit down to discuss that joy. We talk all about Joshua's walk with Christ, from the beginning up until the point now where he's able to spread the word of God to thousands of people. We talk about the ups, the downs, and some questions that you might have about your own walk with Christ. I encourage you to support Joshua. His Instagram is linked down in the description, as well as his podcast, the Small Talk Sunday podcast. And if you enjoyed today's show and you want to see even more incredible conversations, please follow along and leave a rating wherever you may be consuming this show. It really is the best way to help grow the show, and I can't thank you enough for being a supporter. Thank you for tuning in to the R20s podcast. Without further ado, Joshua Brandon. Growing up in the Northeast, I'm from New York. God was never at the forefront of a lot of young people's lives. It was always prevalent, don't get me wrong, but it was never something that was considered essential or something that was heavily promoted. I'm always interested to hear just different perspectives, especially since you grew up in a different part of the country. You grew up in Mississippi. Was God promoted at the forefront of your life? And looking back on it now from a more adult perspective, what do you view about your relationship with Christ at that time? Do you think it was completely forming and shaping of your relationship now? Or I have a bit of a perspective where I think it's important to get introduced to faith at a young age, but I don't think we can truly understand what we're believing in until we get a bit older. Do you share that same kind of perspective?
Yeah, so growing up, a lot of my life was spent in the church. Grandma, grandparents, father, mother, we were all in the church, and it was something that we commonly did. Even around my school, it was almost like a cool thing to be a Christian. And so I found myself being a Christian, and when I was very young, I found myself um, at that time. I'll say naive because I still believe, but you're more naive. So when you hear something from your parents, you believe it.
Yeah.
So my mom said that Jesus is real. So I'm like, oh, there's this great guy named Jesus. And so I was praying every night. And then as you grow older, um, we start to have more skepticism. And so as I grew older, I believe that my faith became, um, I was still a Christian, going to church every now and then, but there were a lot more worldly things that I was worried about rather than being worried about my relationship with God. And so going along with that, I started to become a lot more lukewarm with everything that I did. My relationship with God started to fade away. It was feeling bad. If I didn't pray to Him, I barely read my Bible, and so I think the foundation was always there, but I became very lukewarm, and there wasn't much time even spent to devoting my life to God. And then eventually, after I left college, it was kind of like a wake up call that God gave me. So I graduated with the degree in electrical engineering, and so I could have gone and gotten a multitude of jobs.
Yeah.
If I had gone and applied myself, electrical engineering is very prevalent, so I could have gotten a multitude of jobs in many places. But it just so happened that my job ended up being in Louisiana, in a place where I had no friends, nobody that I knew, and I lived on my own. And I think that God put me out there for a reason, and that was because He wanted me to be out on my own, with no friends, no distractions, so that He could actually cultivate a relationship with me, and that I wouldn't have anybody holding me back, saying, "Hey, instead of doing Bible time, let's go get something to eat. Hey, I know you're busy this weekend, but let's go to the bar this weekend." I
Yeah.
didn't have that anymore. It was me cultivating a relationship with Him. So yeah, I think at a young age having that foundation was great. But I say I believe that a church is a lot more prevalent in the South, rather than it being super prevalent in, I guess, up north or maybe other parts of the country.
Absolutely. And I think you and I have a very similar story, which is kind of funny. I definitely had that same sense of being lukewarm as I grew older. I was always taught that religion was important. I was always taught about how Christ was the savior and all the miracles that he performed. And my grandmother was the biggest source of my faith. And she passed when I was 13. And when she passed, it started to dwindle a little bit. I never think that you can truly lose faith, but I always do think that it can dwindle and you have to rekindle that relationship. And it wasn't until I got to college and I went to a Jesuit school and I was introduced to a lot of people that had a similar type of mindset that I did, that they always thought Christ was important, but I had never been around that in
Mhm.
such a bubble type of setting. And that's where I started taking like my RCIA classes. I got confirmed when I was in college, so a bit later than most people would. I was also an engineer for all of one semester. I had to drop out at the first second I took a CAD class. I was like, I'm done. So I applaud you for finishing out engineering. Shout out to the James Worth Bagley School of Engineering at Mississippi State. They gave you a good degree, and
Yep.
they yeah, setting yourself up on that path. I remember you were talking about that on a show, and you had a great quote where you were saying, what do you think God is trying to teach you today? And why shift away from why is this happening to me? When you get sent out to Louisiana and you have to think to yourself at first, why is this happening to me? Why am I alone? Why aren't I with the people that I love the most? Why aren't I with my great friends? And it takes time to see the plan that he has unfolding for you. And to do that, you really have to open yourself up to listening. And listening is
Yep.
a difficult aspect, even in our personal relationships. We struggle to listen to our friends, our family, to really understand what they're saying to us. At that time
Yeah.
in your life, how did you open yourself up to listening? Because I think that's the first step. And really, if you have the faith to begin with, rekindling your relationship, if you don't have the faith right now, to start finding it.
Yeah. So, and I was at a time period where I was off on my own and I didn't have anybody else around me. And I told myself, this is an area that I want to grow in, um, because I have no other distractions. All I have is work, go home, go to the gym, make my content. And so I was at a time period where I said that I want to grow as much as I possibly can. And so it started off just by me wanting to grow in my content. Um, After I started to grow my content a little bit, I see a few pops on the videos here and there, but there's nothing really satisfying about it. Like, I get a little bit of a dopamine rush, but at the end of the day, they're just videos about music or me working out in the gym. So they didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. And fast forward, I'm sitting in an apartment with my friend. I go visit him back in Mississippi State, for a weekend, and we're staying in an apartment. And he has up on his phone my brother's Instagram. My brother has a video playing, and it's a 5 minute video of him just preaching the gospel and speaking about how God has changed something in his life recently. And so I'm hearing that, and in my mind, I'm thinking. Also, at this time, I've been wrestling about adding in God into my content in general. And so I hear that and I'm thinking in my mind, if my brother can come on here and post a 5 minute video about God and not care what anybody else thinks, then what's stopping me from at least giving him a minute of my day in order to show him how much I love him and glorify who he is?
Mm,
And so I would say from that point on, I told myself that if I'm going to grow in all these other areas, if I'm going to grow into the gym, if I'm going to grow on social media, then the first thing I need to grow in is my relationship with him. And so I started listening to podcasts, started cutting out secular music. I started doing a lot of things to change my life and what it was and how to completely envelop myself in Christ. And so one of those things coming from a podcast was watching The Basement by Tim Ross. I watch him very often, and he's somebody who, whenever I hear him in the way that he speaks, it's God speaking through him to me. There are a lot of things that I catch that change my heart, that change the way I think about a lot of things. So whenever I started to hear him speak about how you can't have a bad attitude about everything that you think, and you have to take these opportunities where it's far from just content only. You have to take the opportunity that my boss got upset at me today. Okay, what was God trying to teach me in that lesson? Dude, I'm having a bad day. I'm trying to trip over. I'm tripping over everything. I didn't have gas before I went to work, so I was late to work. I left work and I had a flat tire. I got fixed a flat tire. I come home and now my plumbing's not working. I'm having a terrible day. And you could just get angry. You could lash out, or you could take the time to sit back, envelop those feelings, take what it means, and say, in this moment, what is God trying to teach me? What is He trying to show me about something that I have to work on in myself? And so I always take that perspective when bad things happen to me. Um, I stopped trying to take it as, why does this happen to me? Why is it always me that this has to happen to? Why am I the unlucky one? Versus, what is God trying to break in me right now that hasn't been broken yet? What is God trying to form in me that I'm lacking in, and He has to put me through these situations in order to be better?
I love that approach. And it's an approach that I still need to work on myself. I continuously try to preach that it's important to put God before yourself. And once you start worshiping yourself over God, that's when a lot of problems start to happen in your life. But it's something that I fall into all the time, where I'm not grateful for a lot of things that I should be. Just spending time with my family, getting to get up in the morning and do incredible things, like even go to work, have a wonderful job that I get to work with a lot of people, get to have these amazing conversations with people like you. It's a lot of blessings in my life, and sometimes I just take it for granted. I know what I loved most about you when I was first introduced to your content was how open and honest you were. You weren't just putting up this facade that it's always great to walk with God. There's a lot of ups and downs, and you were especially open in the beginning that when you started doing this and you were thinking about, oh, this is going to be great for a sense of personal freedom, for a sense of financial freedom. This is exactly what I want to do. And you weren't finding that fulfillment out of that. And it was because you were putting the self first. You weren't putting God at the forefront. And that's a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn and to overcome, because a lot of times we get stuck just being fixated on ourselves, especially in this social media driven era where a lot of it is fueled by likes, attention, this sense of validation that comes from it. And it's very easy to not be humble, I think. And that's something that you talk about a lot, is having to humble ourselves in God so that we can open ourselves up to love and to love other people. That journey, when you're making that realization, there are people who go their whole lives and never make that realization. You're making that at 20, 21. That's so mature, and I think that just speaks to how in tune you are with yourself and with God. Again, it's a similar type of question, but how do you come to that realization, especially when you're on your own, that this isn't fulfilling you, that you need to make a change in your life, and cutting those aspects of your life out? That's a hard step to take. Do you have to do it gradually over time, or do you think it's something that you just have to decide right now and you have to take that jump?
Yeah, I believe that you can take your time with it. A problem that a lot of people have whenever they come over to Christianity or they give their life to God is that they have this facade that I have to drop everything that I'm doing and I have to transform everything I'm doing right now, and I can no longer do the old things that I can't. Which is true. When you give your life to God, there are old things that you can't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact, but it's through the process of sanctification. And so whenever, I mean, a lot of people think, if they don't know a sanctification, that it's a process of you slowly becoming more like Jesus. And so when you start to become more like him and you start to get closer to him, those desires to do those old things slowly start to fade away. So yeah, I was watching a podcast by Tim Ross, like I said, and he speaks very well to me. And something that he said is that whenever he gave his life to Christ, he was a porn addict, and it was something that really affected him a lot. And what hit me is that he said, I gave my life to Christ, and I was still struggling with porn. He said, I was reading my Bible, preaching the word to my friends, but still struggling with something else. And he said, two things can be true at once. And so you can be struggling with a lot of things in your life that you're working on. Not just, it's different to be living in sin and then trying to get closer to God. But when you have the sanctification process going on where you are still struggling with this old addiction or this old habit that you had, but you're still getting yourself getting closer to God and you're feeling guilt for doing that, I think it's a big difference. And so that was one of the big things that changed my mind, is that this doesn't have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen in the snap of a finger. And so the first thing I did was that I read a devotional book every day. My first Christian content started with me reading a devotional out of a book to people on the camera, and that was it. I would post it. Some people would like it, some people wouldn't. It is what it is. And then as I started going along further, it started for me taking it into the gym. And so it was me gradually taking steps and getting closer to God and getting more into the word. And so that I no longer had to read from a book. Now it was just general knowledge that I had about Christ and that I could speak about it in a way that I know about it. And I wasn't just reading from a book in order to give you a perspective on it. And so it's been a slow process and it's been just a growing process, but I think that's the whole beautiful thing about it.
Absolutely. And patience is a theme that we're going to come back to over the course of this episode. But it's so true that we're not operating on our own timetable. I wish I could remember the guy who I was watching who was talking about this, but he gave the analogy that we're trying to run our own race and we're on a treadmill. and the pace on that treadmill is being set by God. And as much as we might want to sprint and we might want to turn that speed up on the treadmill, we can't. God is
Hmm.
setting the tempo for us, and we need to undergo certain steps in our life to walk the path at the pace that He's setting for us. And you had a video some months ago where you talked about that exact topic of you were scared at first and you thought, what are my qualifications to be able to do this right now? I'm no perfect person. I don't have this perfect relationship with Christ. Neither do I. And it's scary to take yourself and put yourself out there because you're opening yourself up to a lot of criticism. There are people who are going to hate you just because of your beliefs. And we're not perfect people. Just like I try to preach Christ, I still struggle with sin all the time. I'll find myself telling little light like white lies all the time. I'm like, why am I doing that? I'll butt heads with my parents. I'll butt heads with my sibling and my friends. And why do I have this anger in my heart? There's a lot of things that I need to work on my personal character, but it takes time to overcome it. And I think just taking these first steps right here is what I admire most about you is you're putting yourself out there and you're working every day to grow. And you're also helping a lot of people who you may not even ever get the chance to meet. They might not even ever interact with your posts, but they're seeing them and they're being exposed to the word. They're being exposed to different verses from the Bible that they may have never heard before. And I can see it in your cadence throughout your videos where you started doing God's gym videos. I could see you looked a little stiff at first, but now when you're doing it, it just looks so natural to you. It doesn't even look like you're reading anymore. It just looks like it's coming out of you and it's just so flowing. And it sounds like the words are coming right from God and you're passing that message along. It's really cool to see just the amount of time and dedication that you've put into it. Being in this position now that you are, you're leading a lot of people to a better a better life, and that's a lot of responsibility, and you're
Hmm.
at a young age too, and that's something that you'll never be able to truly get the grasp of with the world that we live in with social media. You'll never know exactly who's watching the videos. How do you handle that responsibility yourself? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who might be listening that are wanting to take that next step, whether it's they want to start passing along the message of Christ to their friends, they want to start making their own videos, but taking that jump and handling that pressure to build those relationships is not easy. How have you gone about just building that trust in yourself that you can do this and you'll be able to lead people to that light?
Yeah. I mean, I would just say, I would start off just by saying, just be obedient.
Yeah.
There has been a large portion of my life where I find that I feel called to do things um, by God. And even now, there are things that I'm called to do by God that sometimes I don't always want to do. Like last night was, I'll say, it sounds like a small step for some, but a big step for me since I'm an introvert. But I'm at the gym with my girlfriend and I see a large guy, kind of overweight, at the gym, and he takes his shirt off and he was working out with the shirt off. And something in my mind said, go tell him that his confidence is amazing and that you're proud of him and what he's doing. I'm thinking in my mind, no, I don't want to go do that. I'm an introvert. Might be an awkward interaction. Maybe he won't accept it. Let's not do it. But then God said, I'm telling you to go tell him that. And it would just so happen that I was watching a video earlier um, that Tim Ross was speaking about again. And he was speaking about how there was a woman that he saw at a restaurant and he's happily married to his wife. Um, but he felt called by God to tell the woman, hey, I just want to let you know, not in a weird way. I just want to let you know you have a really beautiful face. And the woman was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You just made my entire day. I really needed that. And so we don't know the effect that we can have on people. But when God is calling us to do things, we listen and we be obedient. And something that I struggled with for a long time was that I was doing my word, and sometimes it would pop, and sometimes it wouldn't, and I was so caught up in the numbers. Um, but God just kept telling me to be obedient and follow what He was doing. And so, come December of 2022, I was making my resolutions. My resolution was I wanted to be at 10,000 followers on Instagram by the end of 2023. At that point, I was only at 1,000 or maybe 2,000 followers. And so, fast forward to January, and I'm looking at my phone, and God has given me 90,000 followers,
Wow.
80,000 more than I could ever imagine I was going to have in that year. And so when I saw the way he can bless me, one, it told me to be obedient what he's told me to do, and two, that I can't put a cap on what God can do for me or what God has plans for me to do. And even in this time now, there's still things that I have to find that I need to be obedient about, because after having that huge spike, you can kind of have a little bit of a fall off before you start getting followers again.
Mhm.
And so I hit a huge spike, and then um, for a little bit of time, I was losing some followers because there were people that were like, "Okay, I don't really want to watch this content anymore." I kind of just followed them off of that one video. Now I'm done. And in my head, I'm thinking, is my content getting worse? What do I need to change? The new meta verified came out. Do I need to get verified to push my content out more? People need to know that I'm legit. And God just kept telling me, be obedient. Stop worrying about the numbers. The numbers do matter because they, as Tim Ross said, each number is a person and each person has a name and each name has value to it. So the numbers do matter. But at the same time, I need to stop worrying about who I'm reaching and reach the people that God is going to reach. He told me to put out my message, and whoever's willing to hear it will hear it, and it will change their lives regardless. So I don't need to be worried about if I reach 500,000 or 95,000, or if it's 500 people at one point. I don't need to be worried about that anymore. I just need to be obedient in what he's calling me to do, um, and keep it simple to that point.
That was so beautifully said. I think we have this interesting relationship with numbers nowadays where we get absolutely caught up in them and we can misconstrue them and try to paint them like we're a data analyst and try to make different formulations out of the numbers. But they are important to what we're doing. They show that what we're doing is right and that we're on the correct path, but they can also be so misleading. There can be thousands upon thousands of people who are viewing it, but they're not getting the message. There's that select group of people that will get a lot out of the message, and that's the people that are going to get the most out of it. And that's what felt the same way that I started this podcast. There was a time when I started where there was 3 people watching this, and it was me, my mom, and then one other person. But it was just building that initial skill set, building that initial relationship. And over time, I've had some incredible conversations with my friends. And now I'm starting to branch off and have incredible conversations with people I never even imagined meeting. And it's just staying patient and listening to the path that he's setting you on. It really is special. You're a special dude. And I know we just met, but of course, just listening to your friends talk about you too. You guys have a really cool podcast where you are just really open and honest about what you guys are dealing with in your day to day, what's on your mind, and you have some great conversations about it. They view you as such a leader. They talk about you so highly, and I can only wish that I can build relationships where with my friends where we can talk about each other in that way. It really is something really cool to see, just a group of guys that are so open and honest with each other about how you truly feel about each other. Because I know a lot of groups of guys that don't do that. They just kind of shelter themselves from expressing their emotions, and they never try to build up their friends and make them better. Um, but hearing your friends talk about you, it's so inspiring. They look at you as someone who has an outrageous amount of courage, determination, and you lead by example, which is never easy. There's a lot of people who can talk, but if you actually go out and you walk the walk, that's a completely different level of living up to your word.
Yeah.
Do you notice that in yourself? Like, do you notice this evolution that took place with you? Do you see this confidence build up over time, or do you think it was just the people that you surrounded yourself with that helped you get to this point? They ignited something within you that inspired you to be the kind of guy that you are now.
I think it's just a combination of
Mm-hmm.
all of it. So I do. There are times where I see myself and I think, yeah, I'm growing a lot. Something that I'm constantly trying to do is find areas that I'm weak in, and I try to grow. So the way that I speak, I listen to motivational speakers. I listen to people who are communication specialists because I want to be able to communicate what I'm saying effectively, so that not only do I seem more qualified, but it also makes more sense to you whenever I speak.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, of trying to improve yourself every day, it's good to know that you can't do it all on your own. And so I've always tried to surround myself with people who I thought were smarter or better than me, because I thought that if they were better than me, they're smarter than me, then they can bring me up to a level that I've never been before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I surround myself with people who are strong in areas where I'm lacking. Will, for example, on the podcast, he's an extrovert, so he's really good at just talking and being out there. That's something I don't really do. Like in my videos, it may seem that way, but I don't really just go out of my way to talk to anybody and everybody. But that's a trait that Will has. Hard work and dedication. I think that's what Jack has for me that I don't have. You don't see a lot of behind the scenes work, but Jack is one of the most hardworking people that I'm ever seen. I'm sitting in my bed on a Saturday morning. I wake up at like 6 o'clock. I look at my phone. I'm like, I'm gonna turn back over, go back to sleep. I get a text from Jack. It's him at his computer. He says, "I know you're working right now, just like I am. Glad we're doing this together." And I'm like, now I got to get up and go edit a video. I need to go be productive. And so that's what he brings out of me. And then Jared is also my kind of person that I walk with faith in. They all walk in faith, but I think me and Jared um, connect on a deeper level with it whenever we speak about it. So that's something that Jared has that he helps me out with as well. And so I think whenever I combine myself with my friends around me, they bring out certain aspects that I don't always have. And I can also have imposter syndrome sometimes where I feel that I'm not qualified to be in the position I am. Or if they call me a leader, I don't always see those qualities in myself. And I hate to keep going back to Tim Ross over and over again, but I was watching a podcast with him, and I don't know if you know who Ruslan is.
No.
He's another Christian YouTuber, and they were speaking about how there are a lot of redeeming qualities that you can have in yourself, and that only other people can see it sometimes, and you're not able to see those qualities or those hidden talents that you may have, and that other people are able to sometimes see it vibrantly in you, and you never even realize that you have that ability. So, I think having my friends around me really brings out the best in me, and then being self aware about where I am and who I am and what I'm lacking in and what I could be better at, I think is the greatest superpower that I could say I have.
Well, they certainly seem like a great group of guys, and I'm glad that you have found them and they provide you with that level of support and they are constantly trying to build you up. I think everything you described is a classic trait of great leaders is they're never trying to lead. You didn't want to be the one in charge or kind of dictating what other people are doing or how they live their own lives. People just naturally gravitate towards those type of people. They just have this aura around them and they might not even be able to see it about themselves, but other people certainly can see it. And you're one of those people. And I think the talking aspect is one of the funniest parts is that you do come across as someone who just seems so comfortable talking. And to describe yourself as an introvert, it's fascinating to see that it's more courage than you would anticipate where
Yeah.
you're putting yourself out of your own comfort zone. But when you talk, you speak so well, and I think all that listening to different speakers is certainly paying off. Where your message is clear, it's concise, and you're not taking too long
Mhm.
in your message because we live in a world now where, like you said, if people are watching a video for a minute at a time, they really got to be hooked on what's going on in the video.
Yeah.
It's more of an art mixed with the science aspect of how do you get people to stay on your videos. And
Hmm.
I'm interested to hear just from a creator perspective now, when you're trying to think of the best way to spread the gospel and to get people's attention and to get them to truly listen to the words. I know just being in church sometimes you can hear them speaking in front of you, but you're not actually listening. They're just kind of talking and you just
Yeah.
happen to be there. What have you found is best in your approach? Is there a certain time range that you choose to shoot for in your videos? Do you feel more comfortable spreading the word verbally as opposed to like putting text on the screen for people to read?
Hmm.
Is there anything that you found has really resonated with people more than others? Just to give anybody who might be listening an idea of the best way they can go about spreading the word themselves.
Yeah. I'll say that there have been specific topics
Hmm.
that a lot of people like to gravitate to or listen to because it's something that a lot of people struggle with is temptation, for example.
Oh yeah.
That's something that people struggle with every day and it's easy for them to grasp. So I think a video on my temptation is the one that blew up the most for me. But I don't try to make videos on what everybody is struggling with at that time. It's not what topic can I talk about to grasp them, keep them, and get a follow.
Hmm.
If that was the point, then I'd talk about the same things over and over again. I'd be looking for the
Yeah.
next loop. So a lot of my content comes from me watching other podcasters me watching sermons, and then I find things in those. They may have a completely different message, but they may say one phrase or one liner that stuck with me, and it makes my brain go off on a completely different tangent. So sometimes I'll watch a sermon and I'll hear Mike Todd say something, and then my ADHD brain just starts going off in a completely different direction, and then I have to like jot it down, and then I'll come back to it later, and I'll try to do some more research on it. And if I believe that it's something that I think can help people, or I think it's something that people struggle with, and then I'll begin to form a video on it. I think the biggest thing that helped me is that adding in a hook to what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So hooking people from the beginning keeps them interested on the video. If there are points where I'm not talking, then I cut those spaces out.
Yeah.
Because living in the social media age, we're so prone to just needing what's next. And so we don't really want to sit there and somebody says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about God today." And then they go on about
Pause.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, and there's that
Yeah.
long pause,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't, this is too long. They'll swipe away. But whenever you have some jump cuts between what you're saying, or if you articulate yourself in a certain manner, people are more prone to stay on the video and listen.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I found listening to communication specialists. Um, there's a way that you can speak where it's not just, "Hey guys, I want to talk to you about Jesus today and how he saved my life." That's a monotone way, but if you are able to talk slowly at some point, and then I start to talk really fast about how I love God, and then I slow it back down, you kind of have a mixed match pattern where people are like, "Oh," it feels like they're riding a roller coaster, and they're constantly engaged in what you're saying. And it's small things like that that people don't realize. I find it a lot easier for me to speak and have a video on there with text going across the screen, because everybody learns different, right? Some people learn visually, some people learn audibly, some people like actually seeing the text on the screen, some people want to just see my mouth move and not see the text.
Yeah.
And so when you have all three of those things in one video, it allows each person to be immersed in it, no matter how you learn or what the way that you learn is. And so I think those are the biggest tips I would give when it comes to making the kind of content that I make. I think those are the things that I've learned and abided by, and what I've tried to continue to improve on as I make my content.
Yeah, that's solid advice. And I think until you start doing it, I don't make too many Instagram posts or TikToks. It's more the long form editing. But once you start doing it, you get a better appreciation that it's not easy being a content
Mm-mm.
creator. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it and making it effective. And you're certainly on the right path. And I like that you said that you try to structure your videos around different topics that people are struggling with, and you try to address them and try to help people navigate those difficulties, because that struggle is the biggest thing that I hear from a lot of friends, family members, as to why they've grown apart from God, why they have chosen to not believe, why they haven't come to Christ in the first place. There's a lot of questions that we need answering, and some of them don't have answers per se. And I wanted to talk about some of them with you because you've talked about some that I want to kind of reiterate, just for many members of the audience who might not have heard your answers because they're really good. And there's some new ones that I was thinking about. And one of the first ones that I wanted to talk about is just faith as a whole. And I view faith as kind of two parts. I'll start with the first part, which is belief. We have to believe that there is God in the first place. And some people will say that if I can't see any evidence, I won't believe. I haven't seen any sign. I can't physically see God. So why would I choose to believe? And you've had great videos around this idea of, if God were to reveal himself to you, would you even be willing to listen? And why God revealing himself might not actually be the best thing towards building a relationship with him. I know
Yeah.
you've talked about it before, but can you reiterate that idea as to why it might not be exactly what you think if God were to reveal himself?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to think about it. So the way that I spoke about it in the video is, why doesn't God, because a lot of people got that video can misconstrue. There's a lot of comments about it, like he does reveal himself. And there are ways that God's reveal himself, but the way that I was speaking at is, why doesn't God just pop up out of the sky all big and mighty and say, "Hey, I'm here"?
Yeah.
But in that, if God just popped up and was like, "Hey, I'm here," I wouldn't say you're necessarily forced, but you're almost just like, wow, I have to believe now, and I have to praise him, and I have to do all this. And when you have that feeling, there's no choice in the love that you have to have for him now. So at the end of the day, you have to have a relationship with God, and you have to love him in order to do that. And so you don't really have the choice. It's like either I know this guy and I love him, or I go to hell. And I'm looking at him right now, and I know he's real. So now I'm forced to love him because I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
And so the way that Alex Eubanks said it, and it's something that stuck with me, is that within choice that there's love, and when you choose to love somebody, it hits a lot deeper than being forced in order to love somebody.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the mindset and the aspect that I really took when it comes to why doesn't God reveal himself. But there are other ways that he will reveal himself. And that's where the quote comes from, is that be careful what you ask God for. You can pray to God and say, God, I need you to reveal yourself in a way that I wouldn't even imagine, because I don't really believe in you. And
Yeah.
God may put you down on your knees at your very worst just for you to realize that he is real. Um, there are things you can say, God, I need you. I want to gain wisdom. Show me how to have wisdom. Well, he's not just going to give that to you, but he will give you some of the hardest decisions, moments, areas in your life so that you will gain that wisdom and that you will learn. And so there are ways that God would do that. And then I saw a video on it, and it was saying what would be the most practical way for God to show himself. If he showed himself all big and mighty, it kind of be, people might freak out and it might cause a problem.
Yeah.
If he did it through interstellar cosmic collisions or things like that, people would just think, oh, it's science.
Yeah.
And they said, but what if he came down in the form of man and lived a life just like us, went through every battle, temptation, every struggle that we have as humans? What if he came down and lived a life like that, but lived a perfect life? And even when he came and he was persecuted and hated, he still show you how much he loved you by going to a cross and dying for you and being the perfect sacrifice. And so there's a lot of ways that he has revealed and shown himself to us. And I think that with the undenying evidence that he's given to us, there's no way that I could ever deny.
I heard those words that Alex said too about the relationship with love. And just think about your own personal relationship. If you had someone come up to you and they were like, love me right now, or if you don't, I'm just gonna like throw pebbles at you until you start loving me. And they're just like
Hmm.
annoying you or making you feel angry, and you're just like, fine, 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 I love you now.
Yeah.
You don't really. It's not something that you chose to do.
Yeah.
God wants you to make the choice to love him because that's true love. And
Exactly.
that's a beautiful thing. You talked about God revealing himself. Do you think you have an instance of that in your own life? You had this really cool story where you talked about this song, Days Gone. And when you heard the song playing, it just brought emotion over you, and you started to just feel this rush that God was with you in that moment. And it just felt really powerful. Would you say that's an instance where just something that might not seem like a sign or something that might go unnoticed a lot of the time is just a moment where you can feel his presence like that?
Yeah. I think whenever you decide to develop yourself, envelop, not develop, envelop yourself in him, there are times where you will completely break you down and you will really feel the Holy Spirit inside of you. And so at this point, like, I just went and got food and I wasn't even expecting to have this emotion. I'm just sitting here listening to music in the car, then I'm listening to the lyrics and I see how much they abide towards me and my life. And I just get overwhelmed and I start crying.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was just a feeling with the Holy Spirit. Or there have been times where I came home from doing, because it was wake up in the morning at like 6 o'clock, go to work, work 10 hours at a nuclear plant, come home, go to the gym, edit videos, eat, go to sleep. And I was rinse and repeat for a while. And so there'd be times where I come home and just my social media would be stagnated and I'm sitting there like in bed, like, God, is this really what you want me to do? Like, I'm frustrated, which is a whole other topic about how people speak to God and how they talk to him and how they're not really authentic. That's a whole different conversation. But I'm speaking to God and I'm telling him, like, God, I'm frustrated. I don't understand. If you're calling me to do this and this is what you want me to do, what do I need to do? What needs to work? And there are moments where sometimes we have to just sit there and ask those questions and just sit there in silence. And you just have to listen to them. And sometimes you have a problem thinking, are these my thoughts or is this God speaking to me? And so I think the best way to determine that is that if you can back up what you're saying in your mind with the Bible and what he said, then it's probably God speaking to you. And another way that I was told about it is that whenever God is trying to speak to you, how often do you hear the word no from him? How often are you asking God questions of things that you want to do and God's saying, no, you can't do that? And you're like, but God, it makes all the logical sense for me to do it. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't be able to. And he says, no, that's not what I have for you. It looks great. It looks great on paper. But that's not what I have for you. I have better things for you. Be patient and I have better things for you. And so I think when you have those quiet and still moments with God, they hit a lot deeper and you get a more of an understanding of what he wants to do with you, even though you may not always understand the plan of what he wants for you. And I'll say I have times and moments where I'm like, God, is this what you want me to do? Why is this the plan that you gave for me? And then I'll take a break for a little bit and I'll come back and I'll see things start to change and I'm like, okay, this is what God had planned for me. That I just have to keep the faith and that I can't lose faith over. I can't let my fear cloud my faith.
There are signs around you all the time. And if you're not able to be in tune with them, you're going to miss some of the best messages that God has for you.
Absolutely.
The second part of faith, I think, is trust, where we have to believe in God in the first place, but we have to trust in his plan. And trust is something that I struggle with in my own personal relationships. And I know a lot of people have trust issues. We like to joke about it all the time. Oh, I have no trust. I have trust issues with girls, with anything. Um, Building that trust with God. And like you said, you have to be able to listen to him and accept that he's saying no at times. And you have to be able to follow his plan. Even when you can't see it right in front of you, you have to be able to feel it. How have you built up that trust over time? Is it through reading the Bible, just reading the scripture? Do you look to maybe external sources to help build up your trust? Maybe someone who you trust personally that has more wisdom, I guess is the word I'll use, just more time being invested in the faith. Maybe a mixture of the two, or maybe something I'm not even thinking about.
Yeah, I think I just look to the evidence
Mm-hmm.
that he's given us. Evidence in the Bible, evidence from my brother, from my mom, and that when it comes to me being obedient to him, is that I shouldn't be holding back in that manner, and that I've seen moments where my faith can be let down or dwindled, or I'm letting my fear cloud my faith, and then I hear my mother tell me certain things about how if she wanted to get a new job that she would have to take it because regardless of what money she's making, she's going where God is calling her to go, and that regardless, God is always taking care of her.
Yeah,
No matter where she's gone, no matter what situation that she's been in, God has always taken care of her and the needs that she needed. And so I go back and I think about moments in my life where I had I was having fear over faith, and I'm looking to myself and I'm saying, where have these moments been before? And when has God brought me through it, even though I didn't think I was going to make it through it? Those scary moments where you feel that there's no way I can make it out of this, and how am I going to? But then somehow God always finds a way in order to carry you through it. So I think using personal anecdotes, reading the Bible, having other friends and family who have situations where they put their faith in God and they didn't let it dwindle, and that God showed them that when you put your faith in me, I will take care of you, and that I will. He's an all powerful, all knowing, all loving God, and that He doesn't make a promise that He won't keep.
absolutely. And We will never be able to fully understand his power and his plan, and that's a part of faith. And praying to him is always something that's individualized, but it's something that I think a lot of people might not understand how to get the most out of it. I think a lot of people go into it just asking.
Yeah.
And the way I try to think about it is if you went up to your own dad when you were growing up, especially, and you're just asking, "Oh, can I have $5? Can I have $10? Can we go to the store? Can I get this?" And he just kept giving it to you and giving it to you and giving it to you. Do you really love him because he's just giving you all the things, or
Mhm.
is he trying to teach you something? Is he trying to make you grow as a person? If he said no, would you still love him? If
Yeah.
he just said yes all the time, would you be able to grow? And I think with prayer, we get it confused where we go to God and we say, "Dear God, I need 100 on my test tomorrow. I need to wake up nice and early tomorrow because I need to have full energy to do this. And also, I need it to be 70 degrees and sunny because it's the weekend and I need to have a lot of fun." Like, if you're just asking for all this stuff and you're not thanking Him first and foremost, and you're not asking Him to guide you or give you strength, then I think people might be missing the point a little bit. And when you're praying yourself, you've talked about how it doesn't need to be structured. It doesn't need to feel as if you're growing every single time that you're doing it. Just like you're in the gym, you might not feel sore when you're after, when you're done with the gym
Yeah.
every day, but that doesn't mean that you're not growing. When it comes to prayer for you, is it more individualized based on the day? Do you have any set prayers that you go to routinely? Or is it even something that you say verbally? Is it maybe something that you just say in your own mind and you know that God's listening to you, to your thoughts too?
So my prayer is I pray every morning and every night. Those are given, but something that I'm working on is praying throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get out of my car, and as I'm walking into my job, I say, God, I pray that as I walk into this building today, you will give me the ability to have people see you through me, and that I will radiate that so that others will know your name and who you are through the actions that I provide through you. I pray that you will give me discernment through any situation that I go through the day so that I understand the meaning, the reasoning, and why I'm doing it. And that you also give me discernment over other people's abilities and feelings as well. And so I think that's a prayer that I normally do before I go into work. It's a prayer that I like to do before I go into church or if I'm in worship. I pray for God to give me discernment over what the message that He's about to speak to me
Mm-hmm.
so that I can understand it and that I can get something from it. Sometimes I'll pray that before I get into my Bible. I think the problem that people have with prayer, like you said, is that they just want God, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Thank you for waking me up. Please forgive me for my sin. And then they call it a day. And I think that's great, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
And when people, a problem that I've seen is that it's not only when you're good and then you're praying to God. It's also when things are going bad and people pray to God and they'll pray the typical prayer like God, I pray that you will help me with my situation that I'm going through. I'm struggling. God, I pray that you will be with me. I love you. Thank you. And that and they're and in their mind they're thinking, my God is all powerful and all good, so I know that what He's doing is good. So all I had to just ask Him for it, and I can call it a day. Or and they never really express how they feel.
Yeah.
And you've probably seen the video that I made on it, but it's really hard for God to get to know the fake you.
Yeah.
So it's hard whenever you put Jesus glitter over every single thing and say, I'm struggling, but I got Jesus, which is true. We do
Yeah.
have Jesus who is all powerful and knowing, all great. But at the same time, you are also struggling with something. And those two things can be true. And that when you really have to start deep diving into prayer and speaking to God. Just the other day, it's something that I've worked on. And just the other day, I got into prayer. I said, God, I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I do not understand what you are doing with my life right now. God, I'm in a season where I'm confused, and there are times where I don't hear your voice and I don't understand why you want me to do what I do. But God, I will trust you. I know that your plan is greater than my plan could ever be. and I still love you for everything that you've done for me. And then I'll move on to whatever else I want to speak about. But it's that open and honesty that, God, I am struggling. God, I am upset with you. I may not be, for example, who was it? I think Tim spoke about how when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, that he was so stressed out and that going to the cross couldn't have been easy. Having the flesh that we have as a human, the temptation that we have as a human, it couldn't have been easy to just sit there and know. And we know it wasn't easy because he was like, was he sweating blood, or was he? I think it was crying, sweating
Yeah,
blood,
I
something
think
along
yeah.
those lines. And so when you're that stressed out that you have blood coming out of your body and no cuts have been made, you have to know that the body that he has, that it's human, and that he's struggling just like we are, and that it couldn't have been easy. But he prays to God and he says, God, let it be your will, not mine. And so when you hear that, I do think that maybe he was praying to God, and that there are times where he was maybe upset or frustrated, or that he understood the purpose, but he didn't understand, or he didn't have the want to want to do it. That he knows it's not easy because he has the same fleshly temptations that we have. But at the same time, we flesh that out to God, and then we end it with, but regardless of whether I'm angry, upset, mad, sad, whatever it may be, whatever I'm doing, let it be your will, not mine.
God definitely knows too that if you're praying with him and you are putting on that facade, he knows you're lying.
Exactly.
He knows you're angry. He knows that he gave you these emotions. He gave you the choice to feel these emotions, and
Yeah.
it's normal to feel them. And I talk about this when I interview people just about mental health in general. That if we suppress our emotions and our true feelings, we're not doing ourselves any good. We're not growing and understanding who we are, and trying to navigate these emotions. And if we want to mitigate them, how can you mitigate them if you're just ignoring them and pretending that they don't exist in the first place? Same thing if you're working on a personal relationship. If you just came home every day, you sit down at the dinner table and your mom and dad was like, "Oh, how was school?" And you're just like, "Yeah, good, nothing happened." And you're not talking about maybe you were frustrated over a test or some friend did something to you and you want to talk about why friends would hurt other friends. You're not talking about it. You're not growing and understanding who you are, and you're selling yourself short.
Yeah.
Um, and to be able to do that, to be able to understand God's will, I think you've said it time and time again. It's rooted in the scriptures. You have to be able to open yourself up to reading and to not just reading the words on the page, but truly understanding the words on the page.
Mhm.
I'm just interested to hear your personal take, not on how to get started. We've talked about, not we, but you've talked about how you just need to open the book up, flip to a chapter, and just start maybe one chapter at a time, and just start slowly but surely. But when you're reading, how are you doing it? And what I mean by that is, are you sitting there with maybe like a highlighter and just kind of going over specific verses that might be sticking out to you? Are you pausing routinely to look up various interpretations on a passage and hear other people's perspectives on what it might mean? Are you asking people? Are you doing it by yourself? Are you asking people maybe that you're sitting with in a Bible study type of setting? What have you found works best for you in that regard?
So for me, I just read it,
Hmm.
and I'll take my time whenever I read it. If I read over a passage that I didn't understand, I'll take the time and I'll read over it again and again and again until I get an understanding. And if I
Yeah.
read over it a certain amount of times and I don't understand it, then I'll mark it down. I'll say, okay, this is something I need to research later.
Yeah.
This is something I need to go back and read. I also have my pen if I want to mark down certain scriptures or lines that I read and it hits me immediately, and I say, okay, this is something that hit me, and if it hit my heart, I think it hit somebody else's heart. I want to mark this down, and I'll make a video about it later.
Yeah.
But as far as taking notes and things, I don't really take notes. I don't really highlight. Um, it's just it's never really been in my brain to take
Mhm.
notes like that. Being an engineer, it's never been it like words don't like click for me
Yeah.
in that manner where I have to rewrite it down to understand it. It's kind of just I read through and I get an understanding, and if I don't understand, then I have to go back and maybe I'll read it again. But as far as just like writing things down, it doesn't really click for me.
I think that
in that
that's
manner.
very individualized too, right? Where
Yeah,
I wouldn't expect everyone to have the same kind of approach. I think that's something that you can feel out for yourself over time. And again, the first and most important step is you just start. You just find
yeah,
something that works for you. If it's not working, switch it up a little bit. Maybe start doing a Bible study. Bible studies are a lot of fun. I did one in college. It was a great time. Just getting to go back and forth with people, hearing their perspectives and everything. It's really cool.
yeah.
One verse that you talk about a lot, and forgive me if I got a little bit wrong. Write the vision and make it plain, so whoever sees it will run to it. And even though it may tarry, which means to take a long time,
Hmm.
wait for it, for surely it will come to be at an appointed time. Why did that one
That's
stick
it.
out so much to you? Did it stick out the first time you read it, or was it something you had to come back to a couple times and you're like, now I understand that a little bit more?
It came to me through listening to a motivational speech by Steve Harvey. And the way he said it was is that he's like, I'm giving you guys the cheat code right now with this verse. He said, if you want to be successful in your life and what you're doing, God is telling you right here, right now. He said, write your vision and make it plain so that whoever sees it. So, whatever you want in your life, get a notepad, get a board, write it down. God, I want a girlfriend. Um, I want a loving girlfriend.
Yeah.
I want straight A's. And you take that and you read that every single day. Write the vision and make it plain so that whoever sees it, which is you or anybody else, will run to it, wait for it. So now that you're waiting for it, even though it may tarry, it take a long time, it may not come to pass at that right moment. God is not going to give you everything you want at that specific time. That's why it says, wait for it, for surely it will come at an appointed time. It will come at the time that He thinks that you're ready to receive it. So sometimes we may want certain things in our life, and God says, you're not ready for that. For example, I spoke about it on the podcast. My brother said, I don't do social media right now because the one reason is that I feel that if I blew up the same way you did and I had 90,000 followers, I would not be humble enough in order to still have that amount of followers and be humble in my everyday life. He said, I see something in you that you're able to take that and be humble with it. He said, I don't think that I'm able to be humble with that. He said, so for my own personal um, guidance, I don't even do social media. And so I think God would say the same thing, that you're not ready for that. And so in that case, I'm not going to give you something that you want if I feel that there are still things that are broken in your mind that you're not ready to accept yet. There are things broken in yourself that you haven't broken down for me yet. And so for that, I'm going to hold you back. This may be your goal. This may be your plan, because he says, um, Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, man plans is that? Yeah. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, man makes plans for his life, but the Lord delivers his steps. And so that we can make all the plans that we want for our lives, and He will give us our heart's deepest desires. But we cannot, He will not give it to us until He believes that we're ready, and He will order our steps in order to get there. I wish I could remember the verse that goes along with it in Psalms, but it goes along with the lines of delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you your heart's deepest desires. Psalms 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. And so I kind of linked that in my video, that He will give you the desires of your heart, and that's what you plan for. But He will order your steps in order to get there. So you may say, I'm giving my life to God. I want money. I want to be able to live a free life where I no longer have to worry about money. Okay, I'll give you that life of money, but I'm not just going to drop it in your lap. You're not just going to win the lottery. I'm not just going to blow you up on this. There are some things you're going to have to go through to break your character. Once you break that character and I see that you are subscribed to me, and that you are all for me and not for the money, that the money is just a byproduct of you being invested in me, then we can do it. Because now I have the faith in you that you won't stray away from me once you get that money. You won't turn away once you get those things. And so I think those are like three verses that all like I kind of like link together, that help me with my walk and the things that I do.
That's awesome too, that you can make those connections, that you're at that point now where you can just think off the top of your head and see this passage in Proverbs relates to Psalms. That just comes with the experience and putting in the time. and growing
Yeah.
in the faith. And again, he knows when you're not ready. He knows when you're lying to yourself and you're telling yourself, "Oh, I'm ready." No, he knows. This is another quote. Um, to be honest, I just want to know how it feels to look back and see what God's done. Do you know who said that one?
I don't.
Oh, that was your brother. It's one of his
Yeah.
lyrics.
What song?
I think it was Is it Purpose?
I don't listen to Purpose a lot. I listen to Show Me the Way. Show Me the Way is like
Mm.
while I'm warming up in the gym. That's the only song I listen to. Like I'll sometimes get in the car with them and I won't even turn it on. I'll just start rapping the lyrics and I'll look at him. I'll look at his eyes and I'll just start rapping the lyrics. And he's like, "Dude, stop! I don't want to hear my own voice."
Oh, I feel I don't want to hear my own voice when I edit all these. I can only imagine he has to hear his own song over and over again.
Yeah.
But I heard that lyric and I was just like, that it clicked. I was just like, that's it with patience. Where you're like,
Mhm.
I want to be able to look back and just be like, he gave me all these things. That's so awesome. But you gotta take time. You
Yeah.
gotta be able to go through the journey. You gotta be able to soak it up. And the final thing that I want to leave you today, I want to just get your perspective on this idea. There's a tagline to this show. It's all about trying to find joy in our 20s, and the tagline is a journey to joy. And I use joy very intentionally because I think just like in the Bible, words are very intentional. I wanted to be intentional and not call it like a pursuit of happiness. I wanted to
Yeah.
focus in on joy because to me, happiness is a choice, which I think you've said before too, where we can choose to find happiness in certain things. But joy is this eternal state of being, in my opinion, where no matter how bad things may get, if you can find joy through something, you will be able to pull yourself out of the darkest of times and you'll be able to see the light in the darkest of times. And
Yeah.
I think you can only find that joy, in my opinion, once you become in tune with something greater than yourself. And to me, I call that Christ. And once you're in tune with Christ, you can see all the gifts that he's given you. You can see the relationships that he allows you to have. You can see the fall foliage. You can see the flowers blooming in spring. You can feel the sun, feel the rain on your skin. Just all these things that we get taken
Yeah.
for granted on a day-to-day basis. But so many things that you can look inward and you can say, times are tough right now, but I've gone through every single tough time in my life and I'm alive. Just the joy of being alive is so powerful. And
Yeah.
do you agree with that? It's something that I tell myself, but I haven't really asked that question to anyone else if they see that difference between happiness and joy like that.
Yeah. So I want to go back and rephrase what I said in that video. Because I said that you have to wake up and choose to be happy, but I think the better words is that I have to wake up and choose to have joy every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I think about it is that happiness is a feeling, sad is a feeling, anger is a feeling, and God gives us feelings so that we know. Um, it's basically just an indication that things are right. I'm angry because someone did something wrong with me, so I know that anger showing me that. I'm happy because somebody showed me love. It's your emotion is just to give you your body alerts for things. But like you said, when you wake up every morning and you find the joy in things and you choose to have joy in every single thing that you do, your life becomes a lot more enjoyable. So you find the good moments out of the bad. Um, and like you said, you can only have that eternal joy is when you put yourself in your life in God. Because at the end of the day, everything that we do on this earth is temporary. So when you're looking for short term happiness from either seeking validation from people, if you're looking for short-term happiness from going out and drinking, or you're looking for a simple dopamine rush, those are all happy things on earth that will fulfill you now, but they won't fulfill you for eternal. And so when you choose to have joy and have joy through knowing that your life is cemented with God in heaven, whenever you give your life over to Him, I think that you have a different kind of joy about the way that you walk through this world. John 16, verse 33, made a video about this the other day. I've told you these things so that you may have peace in me. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And so we will walk through life. We will have problems that will cause us issues every single day. We're not going to be happy every single day. But when you read this verse, there's a certain level of joy that you get from it, knowing that, yes, I'm going to have troubles. Yes, I'm going to have problems. But at the end of the day, Jesus has already overcome this world for me. He's already beat this very finite so that I can have an infinite life with him. And so I think that's where people will find the true joy that they're looking for.
Once again, a massive thank you to Joshua for joining me for today. It really is conversations like these that bring me an immense amount of joy. Just getting to see someone who is such a leader at such a young age. I know there's great things ahead for him. I can't thank you enough for being a supporter. I said it at the beginning, I'll say it now. It really is a joy to be able to put this on for all of you. If you enjoy the show, please follow along and leave a rating. It really is the best way to help grow the show, and I can't thank you enough. Until next time, I'll see you.